Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into Jainism, and let me tell you, it's this ancient philosophy with a seriously radical core. It's all about a path made by conquerors, but not of land or armies. Nope, these conquerors were focused on the inner self. And you'll see this whole idea of inner conquest, it ended up having some pretty surprising consequences out in the real world. Okay, so let's just dive right in with a puzzle, a real paradox that sits at the very heart of the Jain story. How on earth did a religion based on absolute nonviolence? We're talking a philosophy that forbids even accidentally harming a tiny insect. How did that create one of the wealthiest communities in all of India? I mean, it sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it? Well, believe it or not, the answer to that question, it's going to tell us pretty much everything we need to know about Jainism. All right, so to unravel this thing, we've got to hop in our time machine. We're going back about 2,500 years. At this point, the Indian subcontinent was going through this massive upheaval, a real time of transformation, a ton of progress, but also a lot of uncertainty. And it's right in the middle of this melting pot of change that Jainism first appears.
So you might be asking, what was sparking all this change? Well, a huge part of it boiled down to one single game-changing technology: iron. Think about it. With iron tools, people could suddenly clear these super dense forests and open up huge new areas for farming. This, of course, led to a massive surplus of food, which then fueled the rise of new cities and trade routes. And along with this new economy, a whole new social class started to emerge, a really powerful group of merchants who were, let's just say, they were getting pretty tired of the old ways.
You see, this new merchant class, they were really clashing with the big religious tradition of the day, Vedic Brahmanism. This was a religion that was all about these complicated, super expensive animal sacrifices, and the whole thing was run by this rigid, hereditary priest class. For a lot of people, especially these new merchants, the system just felt, well, wasteful and totally out of touch. So naturally, new spiritual movements started bubbling up. They were called the Shramanas. These were thinkers and ascetics who just flat out rejected the priest's authority in animal sacrifice. Instead, they pushed for things like personal effort, ethics, and, you guessed it, nonviolence. In Jainism, it was one of these Shramana movements. Okay, so that's the world Jainism was born into, a time of huge change. Now let's narrow our focus a bit and look at the man who would really define this new path. A prince who walked away from it all, Vardhamana Mahavira. I mean, Mahavira's life story is just incredible. This guy was born a prince. He had absolutely everything: wealth, status, you name it. But then, at 30 years old, he just walks away, renounces it all to become a wandering ascetic. For 12 and a half years, he puts himself through these extreme austerities, all to find a higher truth. And then he finds it. At age 43, he attains what Jains call Kevalajnana, basically omniscience. And for the next 30 years, until his death, he taught this path to others, before finally achieving moksha, or total liberation. So after this enlightenment, he became known as a Jina. And Jina means the conqueror. But here's the thing. He wasn't a conqueror of land or armies. No, his conquest was something way more difficult. He conquered his inner passions, things like attachment, anger, and greed. He conquered himself. And so his followers, they became the Jains, the followers of the conqueror. So what was this revolutionary code he taught? What did this path of the conqueror actually involve? Well, it was all built on 5 core principles, known as the Great Vows. He laid out these 5 great vows for his followers. You've got Ahimsa, which is nonviolence, then Satya, truthfulness, Asteya, non-stealing, Brahmacharya, which is chastity, and finally Aparigraha, or non-possession. But listen, while they're all important, that first one, Ahimsa, that is the absolute cornerstone of Jainism. Everything else really flows from there. Okay, so let's talk about Ahimsa, because this is where things get really interesting. This is the paramount virtue in Jainism. And it's not just nonviolence, like we might think of it. This is an absolute prohibition on harming any living entity. And I mean any, from humans to insects, all the way down to microscopic organisms. And it's not just about your actions either. It covers your thoughts and your words, too. In Jainism, even thinking a harmful thought is a form of violence. It's that absolute.
And this wasn't just some abstract idea. It dictates every single aspect of daily life. This is why Jains are strict vegetarians. It's also why they don't eat root vegetables like potatoes or onions, because to harvest them, you have to kill the entire plant. You'll see devout Jains using a soft broom to gently sweep the path in front of them just so they don't step on any insects. They'll wear a mouth shield to avoid accidentally inhaling microbes. They even filter all their water. The level of commitment here is just, wow, it's really something else.
And here we go. This is the crucial point that directly answers our big question from the beginning. Think it through. If you take the vow of Ahimsa, this absolute nonviolence, what happens? Well, it immediately rules out certain jobs. You can't be a farmer, because farming inevitably kills insects and other small life in the soil. And you obviously can't be a soldier, so what's left? This vow naturally pushed the entire community towards urban professions, things like trade, banking, and commerce. And in those fields, they absolutely thrived.
But here's where Jainism gets even deeper. The idea of non-violence isn't just about the physical world. It extends into the very way we think and argue. It goes beyond just physical non-violence. This is a really profound idea called Anekantavada. You could call it intellectual nonviolence or the doctrine of non-absolutism. The core idea is that reality is infinitely complex. No single human perspective can possibly capture the absolute truth. Think of it like this. My viewpoint is a partial truth, and your viewpoint is a partial truth. Insisting that only your view is right, that's what they call epistemological violence. It's a fascinating tool for preventing arguments before they even start. Of course, over time, different interpretations of the vows, especially that vow of non-possession, led to a major split. A great schism, really. You ended up with two main sects. On one side, you have the Svetambara, which means white-clad. Their monks were simple white robes, and they also believed that women can achieve liberation. Then you have the Digambara, or sky-clad. Their monks practice absolute nudity, renouncing every single possession. They believe women have to be reborn as men to achieve liberation, and that the original scriptures were lost. Okay, so now let's kind of zoom back out. Let's look at how these ancient ideas have had this surprisingly powerful and, lasting impact, even in our modern world. And the influence is huge. It really is. Just look at Mahatma Gandhi. He directly adapted the Jain vow of Ahimsa for his strategy of nonviolent resistance, Satyagraha. And that idea of Anekantavada we talked about, in today's polarized world, it offers an incredible framework for resolving conflict and just fostering tolerance. And what about environmentalism? That vow of Aparigraha, non-possession, is basically an ancient blueprint for sustainable living. It's pretty amazing. And that really captures the core takeaway here. In a world that is so full of absolutes, of black and white thinking, Jainism gives us this 2,500-year-old guide to seeing things from multiple perspectives. It's a real tool for a better, more tolerant world. So if this has sparked your curiosity and you want to dive a little deeper, we've got you covered. Just check out the comments section. We've put a link to the full document and a quick quiz for you there. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.